Welcome to Current Events. We're so glad you joined us today because we have an awesome lineup of information that we're going to share with you. To start with, we're going to carry on from last week's current events, where we spoke about the happenings in Lebanon and the explosion that happened there and the whole drama of what's been going on and how this is unfolding before our eyes. So we're going to show you a few news clips right now. So sit back, watch these news clips, and we'll be right back.
An agreement to normalize relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates could lead to other Gulf nations recognizing the Jewish state. Israel's intelligence minister on Sunday told Army Radio that Bahrain and Oman are, quote, on the agenda, adding that there was a chance of a peace deal with Sudan. Jerusalem and Abu Dhabi last week announced a U.S. brokered deal for mutual recognition. In exchange, Israel would postpone a government plan to formally annex territory in the West Bank claimed by Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the deal as historic and said he was still committed to extending his nation's sovereignty over the occupied West Bank.
But I'll tell you, last week was quite an accomplishment. It was a result of very hard diplomacy, much of it being quarterbacked by the President of the United States himself on calls with Bibi Netanyahu and Mohammed bin Zayed. He really pushed this over the finish line, but it took a lot of courage by the other leaders as well. As you indicated, there have only been 3 of these peace treaties since Israel's founding. So it's a historic accomplishment. We think that there's momentum for some additional parties to join and to normalize relations with Israel. We fanned out as soon as this was announced and have talked to, I've been on the phone with leaders in the region. The president has, Jared Kushner has, Secretary Pompeo has. And so we're quite hopeful that we can build on this momentum. I can't give a timeline because these things are tough. You know, these are the toughest negotiations in the world to broker peace between Israel and the Arab and Islamic world. But we're confident that we think there are a couple of other countries that are going to get on board soon, and we're looking forward to that.
But there was a peace treaty with Egypt in 1979, then with Jordan in 1994, often the product of secret diplomacy, and this time with the United States clearly helping one of those Persian Gulf countries, right? The United Arab Emirates has decided to recognize Israel, not just to do business in private and in secret. For Israel, it involves acceptance. You get a map of the region now. Of course, Israel, there it is, sort of toward the left. And look how far away the UAE is. And you know what's in the middle? Saudi Arabia. That would be the big enchilada, or the big falafel, if you will, in the Middle East, because Saudi Arabia is 34 million people and clearly a huge power. Saudi Arabia is not willing to make this leap. But the UAE feels itself very close to the U.S., very dependent on the U.S. It will benefit from Israeli intelligence, Israeli technology, for agriculture, for shipping. Israel benefits, as I say, from acceptance, from having an ally, certainly a friendly country, on the Gulf looking straight across at Iran. It's really good for both countries, Anne-Marie. And now there is reason to hope, as the White House says, that other Arab countries, we think probably little Bahrain, probably Oman, another small country, they've, by the way, cooperated with Israel in secret, but they may also establish diplomatic relations.
Well, isn't that interesting? The whole movement of these states wanting peace with Israel is very significant when it comes to the Bible. Now, the big country, which is Saudi Arabia, apparently they covertly are in relationship with Israel because they allow certain things to take place. Yeah. And so this article here, it's Saudi Arabia silent over UAE-Israel deal, but covert ties under focus.
So this, speaking about this, it says, while Riyadh remains hesitant to publicly declare relationship with Israel, analysts expect a significant increase in behind-the-scenes cooperation. So the UAE's decision to normalize ties with Israel could propel Saudi Arabia to deepen its relations with the Jewish state as Riyadh seeks to entice investments to fund ambitious economic transformation, analysts say. So as we know, the United Arab Emirates on Thursday, which was August 13th, became the first Gulf state to normalize relations with Israel in a historic US-brokered accord that raised the prospect of similar deals with other Arab states. Now, Saudi Arabia, the Arab world's biggest economy, has maintained a conspicuous silence over the deal, but local officials have hinted that Riyadh is unlikely to immediately follow in the footsteps of its principal regional ally. However, the UAE-Israeli normalization lends itself to expanding the realm of indirect Saudi-Israeli relations. And when we carry on reading about this, one of the main reasons that there seems to be this kind of expectation that Saudi Arabia would want to join in and also establish some kind of formal diplomatic peace with Israel.
They've got to watch out for Palestine.
They have to watch
Palestinian
and
problem.
Iran. There's a lot of things that they're obviously negotiating. Nothing about this is easy, but part of their wanting to expand their economy, wanting to expand kind of this massive build and development that they want to do. That's going to be $500 billion. They need Israeli technology in order to be able to do that.
What is that called?
So it's called NEOM. It's called Vision. So it's a centerpiece of Vision 2030. It's called NEOM. It's a $500 billion planned mega city on the kingdom's west coast, Saudi Arabia's west coast.
Mega city they want to build on the west coast, and they need Israel.
They need Israeli expertise in areas including manufacturing, biotechnology, and cybersecurity. So stating here, quoting, the creation of NEOM requires peace and coordination with Israel, especially if the city is set to have a chance of becoming a tourist attraction. NEOM is set to be built close to the Israeli resort town of Eilat, along the geopolitically sensitive waters of the Red Sea. And so, the Gulf states are also there. They're smart. They know that they need Israeli technology in order to be able to achieve what they're wanting to achieve, in order to be able to keep up with the rest of the world.
That's right. Not only Saudi Arabia, but to crown the whole story here of this these Arab states wanting to make peace with Israel. Lebanon. Donna, why don't you read the Lebanese? Here it is.
I have it. Lebanese president open to peace with Israel, facilitating construction of third temple, says Rabbi. A recent statement by Lebanese president suggested that he would be receptive to an agreement with Israel similar to the one signed with the United Arab Emirates, and that's the UAE. The announcement has huge political and security implications, suggesting that Hezbollah may be on its way out, but more importantly, a pact of brotherhood with Lebanon would be an element in the construction of the third temple as it was in the days of King Solomon. In an interview with French language BFM TV on Saturday night, Lebanon's president, Michel Aoun, was asked if he would consider making a peace agreement with Israel as the United Arab Emirates had just done. That depends on Aoun. They responded, "We have problems with Israel and we have to resolve them first." Though the response was non-committal, this represented a major shift in his position on Israel. In 2006, as head of the Free Patriotic Movement, the FPM, he signed a memorandum of understanding with Hezbollah, which included a military strategy targeting Israel. Hezbollah is a powerful political entity having fully 1/3 of the seats in Lebanon's parliament. Concerning the recent normalization deal signed between the UAE and Israel, Aoun stated that the UAE is an independent country. From the inception of Hezbollah to the present, the elimination of the state of Israel has been one of Hezbollah's primary goals. Some translation of Hezbollah's 1985 Arabic language manifesto state that our struggle will end only when this entity, Israel, is obliterated.
Now, the president he would want peace with Israel, but because of Hezbollah now, this is a problem. They have to get rid of Hezbollah.
And everything going on in the Israeli parliament, because we still don't fully know what's going on there, because so much the government, everybody's resigned. So we're still waiting to see what's going to happen there.
So this is a big problem for Lebanon right now, and the people of Lebanon who want peace with Israel.
Right. And according to Hezbollah's Deputy General, Naim Qassem, the struggle against Israel is a core belief of Hezbollah and the central rationale of Hezbollah's existence. Towards this end, Hezbollah has acquired an estimated 100 to 150,000 rockets. The recent blast in the Beirut port has turned public opinion against Hezbollah.
Yes.
The explosion killed at least 171, wounded at least 6,000, causing an estimated 10 to $15 billion in property damage. It left an estimated 300,000 people homeless. Within hours of the blast, Hezbollah announced the cause for the blast was 2,750 tons of ammonium sulfate fertilizer stored for 6 years in a port-side warehouse.
So they've actually confirmed that that is
Yes.
what caused
And
it.
I've seen the
it was
video.
not a it was not an attack from another country.
No.
It was negligence on their part.
Right. And I've seen the video of the warehouse
Yes.
prior to, and it was just stacks of bags in this warehouse.
Yes.
After the blast, thousands of people took to the streets to protest the government, leading many politicians to resign. When considering Israeli-Lebanese relations, it's important to note that Lebanon's flag prominently features a cedar, the national symbol of Lebanon. A massive conifer, the tree appears in the Bible in several places, and King David praised them, hinting at the role they would play in the construction of the temple. That is
And
very
it was built with Solomon's temple.
It was
Yes.
built.
Solomon's temple was built with the cedars of Lebanon.
Yes. And
Very interesting,
May I
actually.
say that it's interesting that the king of Saudi Arabia and his son, the name is Salman,
Yes.
but it's actually pronounced Solomon. And that reminds me of a prophecy my dad gave, where he spoke about Solomon and Saudi Arabia and Yemen. And I'm going to find that and share that with you on Codebreakers at some point. I'm just remembering this now. As I'm looking through this, it's springing up memories in me. But we won't go there today, but I will have that coming up in Codebreakers for you, because it's very interesting what he was seeing. And it was not good with Saudi Arabia. He was saying there was great wickedness in Saudi
Well,
Arabia.
we know
He was
that
seeing.
when this Ezekiel 38 war happens, we know that these Arab states look at what's happened, and then they say, "What are you doing?" Mecca, Medina, and what's the other one?
Mecca, Medina.
Mecca, Medina. What they say to the armies that come against Israel? What are you doing? Have you come there to take spoil? What have you come there for? And we know that Israel particularly has the natural resource of natural gas. And so we know that is something that's recently been, in the last 10, 12 years, has been something that's been discovered in Israel, which was not discovered before. Yeah. And so natural gas to the Europeans and that part of the world is a very significant commodity for them.
And it's interesting about this Lebanon thing, because you kind of see it play out. And, even a couple of years ago, this seemed impossible. The point is that what happened now with Israel and the UAE is historic. Yes. It's the first time in 25 years that a peace deal of any type has been officially signed and declared between Israel and an Arab nation. And this isn't just any Arab nation, it's a Gulf state Arab nation. And, they obviously have a massive booming economy as well. So this kind of connection is really, really special. It's really incredible. And the fact that it's happened now is significant. The interesting thing about what's going on in Lebanon with this uprising, we don't know who's going to end up in power. If they now, following the lead of the UAE, could possibly be more open to making peace with Israel. But this whole third temple thing, there's one town. I was actually speaking about this to Jane beforehand. My father's family comes from Lebanon, and there's a whole family chat, and we were talking, and I was like, can somebody please just tell me where the heck we come from? And where we come from is this little town in Lebanon called Bashari, which is the oldest Christian Mennonite town. It's the only Christian town left in Lebanon. And my great-grandparents moved from Lebanon to South Africa in 1901 to escape Islamic extremism, persecution. And that little town, Bashari, is also called the Cedars of God. And it is one of the only places where those original cedars of Lebanon still grow the way that they did in Solomon's time. Wow. And so it's those same trees that they're still making things out of, and that little town there has still got them. So for the third temple to be constructed according to the way we know it,
because they can't use weapons of war.
Yes.
Or they have to What is the requirement?
So there can't be the sound of a stone or a chisel. There can't be any sound. It can't be cut with anything basically electronic. It has to be hand cut.
Yes.
And the way that the way that Solomon had sent over with Hiram, king of Tyre, the way that he went over there, the way that trade happened, there was very specific instructions and commands, even regarding the way the cedars were cut.
Just like, with the Jewish tradition, and all that was written in Ezekiel, not in Ezekiel, in Leviticus, and
Or even some of the temple specifications were then were echoed in Ezekiel.
yes. So they have to. It's just like the red heifer. They have to. It has to be purified. So they need the ashes of the red heifer to purify the temple. So there's all these rituals that they have to go through in order to build this.
And they need
this
the cedars of
temple.
Lebanon.
So at some point they're going to have to make some kind of peace with Lebanon.
Because you need the cedars of Lebanon.
They need those cedars. So this is very interesting. But I want to get to the point of sharing with you all of this, what this peace treaty or this peace with these Arab states actually mean. In Daniel 9, it speaks about the covenant with many. And, I'm going to start reading it from the 70 weeks is a very famous prophecy. It's the foundation of prophecy and what's going to happen in the end times. So Jesus came and he made an end of sins. He did all these requirements that this prophecy is predicting. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city. To finish transgressions, that's what Jesus came for. To make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring an everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Jesus came and he fulfilled that part of it. And the angel said, know therefore and understand that from the beginning, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah shall be 7 weeks and then 62 weeks. Now, the interesting thing about dividing up, why didn't he just say 69 weeks? Why 7 weeks and then 62 weeks? Is because from the beginning of it to the 49 year, which is there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The temple was built in the first portion of it, and then they waited all that time for Jesus to come onto the scene, the 62 weeks. He'll be cut off. So after the 62 weeks, he would be cut off. But the first part was to build the Jerusalem back and the temple. Then the 62 weeks, Messiah would be cut off, but not for himself, and he was cut off for the sins of mankind. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And that happened in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the city and the sanctuary. And the interesting thing about that part of it is the last 7-year prophecy, the last 7-year prediction of what's going to happen in the tribulation period. And this is the covenant that we're seeing, I believe anyway, this is the covenant that we're seeing unfolding before our eyes. Because what this part of the prophecy says is now who is he? He is that prince, that the one who is to come, you see. After the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, who destroyed the city and the sanctuary in 70 AD? It was the Romans.
Right.
So the prince who is still to come, who is part of the people who are part of that prince, which is the Romans, they are the ones that are going to confirm this covenant. This prince is going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And he's not going to create the covenant. He's going to actually confirm an already created covenant. He's going to make it better. He's going to elaborate on it. He's going to enlarge it. He's going to make it better in the eyes of the world. This is what this prince who is to come is going to do. And this prince we're talking about is the Antichrist. He's the son of perdition, the Bible speaks about. And he is going to confirm or make better this covenant that we see starting to be put together. We can see how countries are being put in place.
Yes.
We're seeing how all of this is coming to pass before our very eyes. And I certainly do. I'll be quite shocked if this is not the covenant. To be quite honest, I'll be shocked because really I've been studying this for quite a long time. I've listened to many prophecy teachers, and of course I've made up my own decision about this part of it. So it's up to you to go and discover and believe what you want to believe. It's not my position to try to persuade you that what I'm saying is correct. This is the way I see it, and from a lot of study and a lot of observation from other prophecy teachers, I've come to this conclusion. And especially after seeing what has happened in the news this past week. I mean, who would have thought these countries, these Arab countries will be wanting to make peace with Israel, wanting to side with Israel. This is huge. And this part of the prophecy of Daniel, I mean, Daniel was the most accurate prophecy on the face of the earth that ever walked. He is actually one of the most accurate prophets because everything that he prophesied before this has come to pass. Jesus coming, dying for the sins of mankind. When Jesus said not one stone would be left upon another, 70 AD happened and not one single stone was left upon another, so that nobody could even see where that temple was. And they try and say, it was over here, it was over there. That is because not one stone was left on another. They can't actually show where it was, which is a prophecy that came to pass that Jesus prophesied. And then for this last portion of it, which I don't think you can mistake, that he's saying that the Romans in 70 AD were the ones that we know that they destroyed the city in 70 AD. And we know that their prince, the prince of these Roman people, who is still to come, comes from Rome. He comes from Rome. He's not an Arab. He comes right from Rome, just exactly like this prophecy is telling us. And he's going to confirm this peace deal that the whole world is watching Israel get a peace deal. They've been fighting over it for the last 20-something years. Find peace for Israel. Find peace for Israel. This is prophecy that is coming to pass, and no one can say that it's not. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing what's actually happening.
And also confirmation that whether people like him or not, Donald Trump has been the hand that has joined.
Yes. So and then people want to say, no, he's got to be the Antichrist. No, he's not. This Antichrist confirms a covenant. He's not the one that actually puts this covenant together, this peace deal.
Very important.
He's the one that makes it look good to the rest of the world once Donald Trump is gone.
Yeah. Yes.
So Donald Trump may be gone this election, but I don't believe it. I believe we've still got another 4 years. Mm-hmm. I'll be really, really upset if Donald Trump doesn't win, to be quite honest.
Well, God has already told us that he's going to win.
I know.
2 terms.
So I'm just saying.
We were talking about doing some praying and fasting coming up to the election.
I already am.
We need to.
But we were talking about doing a whole thing with everybody out there.
I think that we all should, yes.
You know, just some good old school warfare.
Some very, very serious prophecy right here in the Bible. Very serious.
But this is the thing. Donald Trump isn't confirming anything. He's
No,
part
he's
of
not.
something that's initiating, beginning, but he's not confirming.
No.
I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, he's not the one confirming this covenant. He is not the Antichrist. Donald Trump is not the Antichrist.
Neither is Jared Kushner.
The stage is being set for this son of perdition, this Antichrist figure, to come on the scene and take this covenant that's already been sort of created and really put it together so that the whole world will accept it. And because he's going to be the one that actually gets the world to think that he's going to be the one, and they're going to say, peace, peace.
Right, because then he
know?
shall confirm a covenant. That's
Yes.
a very good point there. With many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week,
He's going to not keep his word.
right, and he'll bring an end to sacrifice and offering.
Yes.
So this is speaking about in the third temple. Do you think that's
Yes, that's
okay?
right.
And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate.
So that is all about this last verse here. Verse 27 is all about the 7-year tribulation, which is going to come upon the whole world. Like it or not. It's what the Bible says, unfortunately. Or fortunately, for us Christians. There's another bit of information here that we're going to read to you, which is the next.
Is this the Iran-Turkey?
The Iran-Turkey.
Okay.
Because this is also part of prophecy. It's part of what's happening in the news right now, very significant. And you want to read that, Christine? You can read it.
So Iran and Turkey team up against UAE over normalization agreement with Israel. The chief of Iran's armed forces, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, said on Sunday that his country's approach to the United Arab Emirates would shift because of the UAE's normalization agreement with Israel. Definitely, the Iranian nation's attitude towards this neighboring state, the UAE, will change fundamentally, and the Islamic Republic's armed forces will also deal with that country with different calculations. Threat anybody? Said Bagheri, according to Iran's Tasnim news agency. Iranian Parliament Speaker Bakir Kalabaf, I don't know how you say that, said on Sunday, I'm sorry, my Arabic is not as easy going as my Hebrew. Hebrew is a lot easier for me. Said on Sunday that friendship with Israel was treason against the Islamic world. Tasnim reported a day earlier, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani harshly criticized the UAE over its August 13 announcement. These days, we have faced a neighboring country which has approached the enemy of the Islamic world and the region and the murderer of the Palestinian nation in a decision to get close to the Zionist regime, said Rouhani. According to Iran's Fast News agency, the UAE's measure is 100% wrong and condemned. And then the Turkish president, Tayyip Erdogan, said on Friday that the normalization agreement was intolerable and that Turkey may suspend diplomatic ties with the UAE and withdraw its ambassador. The move against Palestine is not a step that can be stomached, he said. Now, Palestine is either closing or withdrawing its embassy. The same thing is valid for us now, said Erdogan. And he added that he had given orders to his foreign minister regarding the matter, according to this report. I told him we may take a step in the direction of suspending diplomatic ties with the Abu Dhabi leadership or pulling back our ambassador, he said. Turkey maintains diplomatic relations with Israel, but the ties are tense, as the Islamist Turkish president pursues a foreign policy at odds with Israel, and he supports radical movements throughout the region. So the hatred is very clear. The president before Hassan Rouhani was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and he in 2008 spoke very clearly and said that their goal is to wipe the face of Israel and the memory of it as a nation off of the face of the map.
And that's exactly what Hezbollah wants.
It's the same
that's
thing.
That
is their goal.
Their goal is to just get rid of Israel and
Tiny
just
little
to
nation.
think about how absurd that is.
My question is about the Palestinians right now. So they're making this agreement and the Palestinians are now upset.
They're rioting, which is a very big surprise.
And one thing that I was thinking about when it comes to the Palestinians, because I remember, I think it was a year or two ago, they had offered to help build up Trump and Kushner and all of them had been trying to help the Palestinians, offering them financial aid.
That was the beginning of this year.
Yes, it was the beginning of this year, to try to help them build up their economy and their own country. And they just didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want the help. What they want is the Jews killed.
Yes. They want them out.
They wanted to wipe them off the face of the earth.
They're not going to accept anything because that's not what they want. They want the whole country.
And every time anything is, and I'm thinking to myself, if you're being offered an opportunity with all the land and what you already have, why would you turn it down just because you hate a people so much?
Because it's not natural, it's supernatural.
It's exactly the point I'm trying to make.
Well, here's a very, very interesting article here. which is what I wanted to read to you last week. Mohammed Talhidi, known as the Imam of Peace, responded to an Instagram post on an account named the Holy Shrine of Imam Hussein, claiming the Temple Mount in Jerusalem has holy significance to Islam. The Instagram account of the Holy Shrine of Imam Hussein is once again spreading lies, Tawhida tweeted on Monday. There's no mosque of whatever in Islam. This is stolen from the Jewish term Beit Mikdash, which refers to the Jewish structure by Prophet David, which was King David, really. Secondly, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem today is not the one referred to in the Quran. This is what this Imam of Peace is saying. The Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem today is not the one referred to in the Quran. It was built by the caliphs in latter years, was opposed, Imam something or other, Bakir, was opposed to the caliphs. So how can he order the Shia to go and pray there? The shrine should stick to religion and leave politics. You read this part because I'm getting tongue-tied.
Dr. Mordecai Kadar, a senior lecturer at Bar Ilan University, agrees with Tawhidi, referring to Muslims' claim to the Temple Mount as fake news. He explained the historical fallacy that surrounds this claim in an article published in Arutz Sheva. Early Islamic sources state that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, literal meaning the farther mosque, as in farther away, mentioned only once in the Quran, was one of the two mosques located near Ji'irana, a village located between Mecca and Ta'af in the Arabian Peninsula, now Saudi Arabia. One of the mosques was called Al-Masjid Al-Adna, meaning the closer mosque, and the other Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, the farther mosque, meaning distance, closer mosque, farther mosque. When the Quran refers to the Al-Aqsa Mosque while telling the myth of the Prophet Muhammad's nighttime journey from the holy mosque of Mecca to Al-Aqsa, that is the farther mosque. It is referring to the mosque in Ji'irana. In 682 CE, 50 years after Muhammad's death, Abd Allah ibn al-Zubayr, the tough man of Mecca, rebelled against the Umayyads who ruled Damascus and would not allow them to fulfill the Hajj in Mecca. Since the Hajj pilgrimage was one of the 5 basic Islamic commandments, they were forced to choose Jerusalem as their alternative for a pilgrimage site. In order to justify choosing Jerusalem, the Umayyads rewrote the story told in the Quran, moving the Al-Aqsa Mosque to Jerusalem and adding, for good measure, the myth of the nighttime journey of Muhammad to Al-Aqsa. This is the reason the Sunnis now consider Jerusalem their third holiest city. Shia Islam, mercilessly persecuted by the Umayyad Caliphate, did not accept the holy Jerusalem Canard, which is the reason the second holiest city to Shiites is Nakif in Iraq, the burial place of Shiite founder Ali bin Abi Talib. Many of the Shiite elders, Iranian and Hezbollah, only began to call Jerusalem holy after the Khomeini rebellion in 1979, so as to keep the Sunnis from accusing them of being soft on Zionism.
Crazy.
Yes, it is crazy.
Comes
They just
from
changed
Imam.
the story.
And I always get Sunnis and Shias mixed up. Saudi Arabia, which are
Sunni.
they? They're Sunni. Okay, so I've heard this, and you can correct me, Christy, if I'm wrong, that this, in Saudi Arabia and the Sunnis, when the great Imam is supposed to return, they are supposed to hand over all their gold and goods and everything they own to him. So they're not too keen on his return. But the Shias, who are not wealthy in general, want that return.
Yes.
Is this true?
The belief of the 12th Imam, or the hidden Imam, or the Islamic Messiah, as you were, it's a branch of Shia Islam that believes very similarly to what we believe about Jesus returning. They believe that the 12th Imam will return to earth and establish an Islamic caliphate going around the world, that every infidel will be killed, and that everybody will, in complete obedience, bow down and give up everything that they have to the 12th Imam, and he will rule, and it will basically be Islamic Disneyland. The problem being that anybody who doesn't join with him is killed. No Jews are given a chance. Christians are given a chance to repent and change their belief system, and that when the 12th Imam returns, Jesus will return as his lieutenant and will kind of go around to all the Christians and say, you were wrong, this is the way, etc., etc.
And Jesus will say yes.
Yes, apparently this is how it goes. But this is the key that so many people don't understand, and this is something I feel like I sometimes get on a hobby horse about. The teaching, this 12th Imam teaching is this: in order to summons the return of the 12th Imam, in order to summons his return to earth, he will establish Sharia law upon the whole earth, and Islamic caliphate rule will be established upon the whole earth. The only way to summons him is through global destruction and devastation. How would you achieve global destruction and devastation? Through nuclear war. Why is Iran working so fervently to be able to cause nuclear war? Because the leaders of Iran are 12ers. Hassan Rouhani is a 12er. The Ayatollah Khamenei is a 12er. They believe in this branch of their theology. Their eschatology is that of a 12er. Now I'll sit down again off my high horse of...
No, I'm glad you were able to go.
Much
Because
excited
some
about
of
the
this,
12ers.
especially for people who are not familiar with Islam, just as in Christianity, you have the same kind of, here it's quite it was who got the mantle from Muhammad. And that there was that argument over there, which is why you had the split of the Shia and the Sunni in the first place. So you have at the very foundation of their belief system a very big wedge and divide.
Well, what I find very, very...
And they fight each other.
What I find very astonishing about the whole thing is that it's so parallel with what the Bible speaks about.
Such deception.
Yes, they just twisted the Bible to make it look like it came from Muhammad. Meanwhile, he was only born 680 something years after Jesus died.
After Jesus.
So it's laughable, really.
Well, the thing
really
is that
laughable.
if you look at what is happening throughout the world, especially in Western civilization, is a very sort of sneaky infiltration of these certain beliefs into Western culture, which is founded on Judeo-Christian values. So it's almost like, well, if we can't force you, we're going to trick you. Yes. And that is, I think, what we're seeing playing out in the Western world right now, because the way they view the Western world, even if you're an atheist, you're an infidel. And so it doesn't matter. As if you don't convert, if you don't fall in line, if you don't, anything that is like that is something that needs to be recognized, something that I think we should all be praying really hard right now, because this is part of the spiritual attack that's coming against especially the United States of America, but all the Western world right now.
Well, on top of all of that you've just heard,
China.
This is an article about China. China warns of imminent war against U.S. Potential Gog-Magog, says a rabbi. So this rabbi is speaking about what's going on in China right now as U.S. aircraft carriers sail the South China Sea. Many Chinese military analysts are warning that a military confrontation is inevitable. Rabbi Pinchas
Pinchas.
What? You tell him?
Pinchas.
An end of days expert notes that as prophecy states, a military confrontation is inevitable, and China, though not explicitly named in the Bible as the aggressor, has a clear role to play in the nemesis of Israel. With 2 U.S. aircraft carriers loitering in the Indo-Pacific, bombers stationed in Guam, and surveillance planes conducting frequent runs around China, the intention of the U.S. is no longer a show of strength, rather through training, but more preparing for battle. U.S.-China relations are on a rapid downward spiral, which is clearly true. The U.S. has accused China of stealing intellectual property. China's role in the current pandemic exacerbated.
Situation. Yes,
right.
It did.
But the tense relations have taken on military ramifications due to literally expansionist China, which has been building an artificial islands on reefs in waters also claimed by other nations in an attempt to to establish facts on the ground that will allow them to annex the region. Here's that word annex again.
Add to, not take away. I was a little unclear on the definition of that word and was not even aware until recently.
Military analysts have noted in the recent emphasis by the Chinese military on the People's Liberation Army rocket force, which would not only threaten U.S. aircraft carriers, but would U.S. bases in the Pacific Theater. The PLA has nuclear strike capabilities. That's their aircraft carrier. Though it is true that there are no explicit reference to China in the Bible, that does not preclude understanding China in a prophetic role. This is what the rabbis is speaking about. This can certainly include China. It is interesting to note that according to Mongolian tradition, their nation was descended from Magog, which is in the Bible in Ezekiel 38. Magog thinks and acts as if the entire world belongs to them and that they are the masters of everything. Now, doesn't that sound like China? Yes. They don't care what anyone else thinks. Gog is not afraid to start a huge conflict just to get one thing that they want. They also make alliances for the moment, lasting only as long as their interests last. The war of Gog and Magog is not intended to punish Israel or the nations. The real purpose is to make people choose, to make it clear what side they're on. And this is entirely evident in the attitude towards Israel. Once the war of Gog and Magog begins, everyone will look back and see how it makes sense. It should be noted that the Chinese military will be holding week-long live fire target attack drills in the South China Sea this next week. So that is, I thought, an interesting article to read to you because of the Gog Magog and the fact that it comes from a rabbi. Very interesting.
Very interesting. The Magog with China and the way it was described there, because that is what China is doing. Yeah. I know in South Africa that the South Africans right now during the pandemic have taken money from the Chinese government, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I do believe that they now are starting to put up Chinese police stations in South Africa. And one thing I remember is that Grandpa Fred, which is my great uncle, my mom's uncle, Fred Roberts, my mom and dad helped him start the first multiracial church in apartheid South Africa.
Young back then.
But you were helping Grandpa Fred. He was older. He was the father figure there. But he had a dream, and in the dream he saw Chinese ships coming to the shores of South Africa.
Yes.
And that was a very long time ago that he had that dream. And I just find that very interesting because even in South Africa, where we are from, so China is not just America or here or there. They are doing exactly what he says there.
They're taking over.
They're taking over.
They've already done that with so much of Africa.
Yes.
Yeah, that Magog thinks and acts as if the entire world belongs to them. And truly, that is what is happening. So what you see is Trump then came in, starts making them accountable and saying, hey, you're not paying. And hey, wow.
And then all of a sudden we get a virus that takes over the whole world.
And then you have a pandemic released. And the rest is history, as we all know. So I am very suspicious. I do not trust this. And I feel very bad for the citizens of China who are suffering. I think we need to continue to pray for them, because in a communist country, they do not care about the individual. That is the danger. That's what they're trying to do in America right now, is push this communism. We have got treason and traitors and terrible things going on with this. And so this is really, if you want focused prayer, I would say this is an area of focused prayer for all of you with your prayer groups. I'm in some of them with you on social media when I'm getting on. I'm trying to avoid it a little bit, but this is just a very interesting article. I mean, this has been very informative to me today. So that's my 5.
Well, we need some good news.
We're going to end with some good news.
How about you read the good
Sure
news?
thing. This is, as we kind of close, we will end with some good news. A biblical company, this is coming out of Israel, invents mask that actually kills COVID-19. An Israeli company has succeeded in creating a washable mask fabric that claims to kill 99.87 to 99.99% of all germs, including the coronavirus.
The mask actually kills the virus.
Synovia started out in 2013 working on a revolutionary sonochemical coating that was the result of 10 years of research at Bar Ilan University under Professor Aharon Gedanken. At the time, they were focusing on antimicrobial textiles for long-term use in hospitals, but when the pandemic began, the team realized that their technology could be enormously helpful in helping to alleviate the shortage of critical personal protective equipment. The patented new technology uses calibrated ultrasonic sound waves to chemically treat fabrics in order to combat the transmission of bacteria and viruses. It's got a very intensely high level of zinc oxide, nanoparticles evenly embedded that destroy bacteria, fungi, and viruses through a safe and renewable biological reaction. The new German virus-fighting fabric used in the Sono mask has been lab certified to filter over 98% of particles up to 5 microns, meeting the WHO standards and representing a significant improvement over the American and European filtering face piece benchmarks. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of their mask is that it is reusable, maintaining its protective properties through more than 65 industrial wash cycles, so the mask can be worn every day and washed once a week.
We need those masks here in the United States.
For election day.
Well, I just want to read Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. And this is what is actually going to happen to the world at the very end. And it's just amazing to me. It's about the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. And it starts, and I'm reading from verse 31. O you, O king, watched, and behold a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. Its image head was of fine gold, its chest and arms were of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet, the iron and the clay, and broke them in pieces. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. And that mountain is the kingdom of God. And that is the kingdom Jesus said for us to pray for. He said, pray for the kingdom to come. And this is where the kingdom comes. It hits all the other kingdoms of the world, smashes them to pieces, that the wind blows them away, and God's kingdom is established on planet Earth. And that is what we need to pray for. Pray for God's kingdom to come. And like I say, every time we have a current events, make sure you and your maker are on the same page. We love you all, and we'll see you next time.
God loves you so much, and guess what? We do too, because He lives in our hearts. We want to hear from you. You can email us at hope@houseofdestiny.org, and be sure also to tuck in a testimony when you have opportunity. God is great. He's doing a wonderful work, and we're excited about it.
Thank you for watching the House of Destiny's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get all of our latest content. This video was brought to you by all of our generous supporters. If you'd like to give, click the link in the description. We have new episodes every week, so stay tuned, and remember, you're somewhere in the future and you look much better than you look right now.